Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. Fun episode this week. We've got a lot of League of Legends coverage to talk about, kind of look at the different regions, just a little bit of some teaser news for F1 in terms of the upcoming season and everything. And so just a lot to get into. Justin, how you feeling? Good to see you, my man.
Yeah, good to see you too. I'm feeling pretty good. Let us start where we always do. Tell me about your week, man. How you been?
I've been pretty good. It was a nice week, nice weekend. I got to hang out with some people to watch the Eagles game. I had off on Monday for the holiday along with my new schedule adjustment and everything for the meantime. So pretty good overall. But getting into my Rose, Thorn, and Seed for this past week. My rose is mostly that I'm just kind of feeling more comfortable at work and continuing to get into the swing of things. I feel very welcome there, and all the people are super helpful, and they've told me that they appreciate kind of the work that I've been putting in and all. So I know I've said that a couple times recently, but it's kind of nice to just get those little words of encouragement periodically. So between that and just kind of a nice weekend hanging out with a few friends and everything, pretty good week. So that is my rose. My thorn currently is the United States healthcare system, because it's, and I'm sure that you had to go through and figure a lot of this stuff out when you and Sarah started your own business with insurance and everything. But going from one job to another and just having 3 months in between till my 90 days of them being you can either have no health care or you can pay crazy amounts of money to keep your insurance for these 3 months is really a shitty system for someone who's going to a new job that's going to be an improvement for them and everything, to just kind of be try not to get hurt over the next 3 months. That's kind of it's been pretty rough looking at how that could I mean, it's a bitch for me. I can't imagine someone who has some actual some really serious health conditions and stuff like that trying to go through the same process. So
yeah, I can imagine it gets ridiculous, and it's the kind of system that forces people into staying at maybe less than desirable positions or jobs because of the type of health insurance that they receive or can get or whatever. But then you're on the other side of the spectrum where you don't want to be uncovered for any amount of time. God forbid something does happen, and that's got to be super stressful as well.
Yeah, well, and just even looking at getting my ADHD medicine, the cost is a few $100s more with me not having insurance for a 30-day prescription.
Yeah,
$400 to $500 more than what I normally pay, just because they're you got a new job, so suck it up. So the whole system, it was trying to figure this stuff out and everything, and going through all of that over the past couple weeks has just been a brutal awakening to the current system for me to just be what are we doing? It's been rough. Just to and none of the like documents or anything that you're trying to figure out how to go about any of it is written in plain language. It's all like confusing. Is like, I don't know. So that's just been frustrating. So that is my thorn for the week. But my seed,
and that's the just quick note. That's the like pay what am I saying? It is healthcare is privatized, so it's like they're all for-profit organizations. Right?
oh yeah, so
and that's like a big difference from other countries.
Well, it's
obviously
just like,
there's pros and cons, and other things go up as that, whatever. But just saying.
Yeah, and it's just weird how money just seems so fake when it comes to insurance. Like, I don't understand how me paying my monthly premium that is like significantly less than the cost of that medicine is all of a sudden like, oh, like you can pay $200 or pay $20 for your prescription, or you can pay $450. Like that doesn't even make sense. It's not like, oh well, like it's normally $50, but because you have insurance, it's like 60% discount or something like that. It's just like, oh, we just throw out random numbers and then like here's the fake number that you actually pay. And I'm like, all right, okay. You just have to.
Yeah, and then there's an element where it's like there's an element where they'll. Well, what you're getting at is, yeah, it feels like having the insurance is basically just like a membership card. Like, can I get the cheap meds and the cheap care? And they're like, are you paying for the club? Yep. All right, cool. You're in the club. Yeah, get on in here. It's only $25. It's like the friend price or whatever.
Yeah.
But they make it illegal to not have the health insurance. So it's like, well, so then it's not.
Yeah.
It's less of a club and more of a
racket.
Hey. Yeah. Hey, go and get in that room there, buddy boy.
Casual stick up.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure you're feeling that sting.
Yeah,
that's unfortunate.
It's just annoying, like, to think that is something that happens just from getting a new job. Like, I think the last time I moved to a new company, I was still under my parents' health insurance, so transitioning over was like rather simple. They were like, you pay it now instead of your parents. I'm like, okay, that like makes sense. But yeah, the whole system's like pretty whack. And even like the one thing that I was gonna say is like a slight positive, I still have to kind of look at it as a negative, because if you didn't know, you can go onto the U.S. Postal Service site and you can order free at-home test kits. I think you can get 4 for free. You sign up, put your mailing address, and like they send them to you in I don't know, a few weeks. So So even with that, it's like we're almost 2 full years into this whole thing, and it took that long for them to be like, maybe we should send some test kits out to people for free so that they don't have to like panic and stress and every CVS on this side of the Mississippi is out of them. Like, it's weird.
Well, yeah, so some regions can give them out for free, and they just got them stacked to the gills, where all you gotta do is put your name and they'll mail one to you. But then there's areas where, you can't get one in, this country or that country. So it's kind of odd seeing, there's apparently enough somewhere. It's just the lack of like, we don't want to.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't pay us enough money yet.
So it's like
whatever.
It's a good thing that they're sending them out. So I'll take that for what it is. And
sure.
Hopefully
they're not doing enough.
It could have been way sooner, but government is slow. So, so that's that.
Shopping on the health insurance marketplace is tough. That's ultimately what you're getting at.
Yeah. Pain in the ass.
EIA, baby.
What is EIA?
PIA.
PI.
PIA. Pain in the ass.
Oh, gotcha. I was like, is that an acronym for some like insurance thing that I don't know about? Is there more that I need to read up on?
I imagine that's what your insurance agent calls you when you call up. So it's likely big insurance slang where it's like, oh, it's that old PIA again.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yep.
And my seed, which kind of also plays into this, is I am going on a couple of trips coming up. One to Nashville for a wedding, but the other's a snowboarding and ski trip with some friends, and that'll be fun. But it's also, again, before I get like onto my new health insurance, so I'm like, I have to just be very, very careful.
Gotta hit the bunny slopes.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna be like bobbing and weaving down the mountain. Nothing.
Are you having PTSD at all? Are you like waking up with cold sweats of like, oh my collarbone?
Nah.
Okay.
I'll be fine. I'll ice skate again. I'll ski and snowboard again. The winter sports can't keep me down.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to both those trips coming up. So it should be a good time and everything. So looking forward to that. But Justin, let me hear about your week. What do you got?
Well, as you can tell from my show notes, my rose thorn seed may be a little bit longer, but I feel like I have to get this out. You're gonna be my therapist for the day. You're gonna put me on the couch. So I'll start with my rose, thorn, and seed because they're all kind of related. And so, well, I'll start with my thorn. I am my own worst enemy. I'm my biggest thorn. And what do I mean by that? So I find that I am, whether I would like to admit it or not, I have unmeetable expectations of both myself and the others around me. And, well, let me bring you into the conversation instead of me just talking at you. So what do you think about this idea? All struggle comes from unacceptance. All struggle. So that would mean even like a large war is born out of some group not accepting something. And then that would go all the way down.
Do you mean
any kind of struggle?
Conflict or like, because I feel as though like you could struggle due to environmental conditions that are outside of anyone's control, and that's like you're struggling, but it's not because you're like not accepting anything. You are kind of working counter to the environment, which is why it's a struggle, because you're trying to, whether that's survival, whether that's happiness, whether that's health, you're kind of working against it. But I don't necessarily mean that doesn't mean that, I don't think that means that you haven't accepted things for like what they are. I would say a lot of conflict does come through not being accepting of the situation and where people are at in terms of like the amount of time that they may have to put into something, the amount of maybe just like perseverance or like focus to be like, maybe they just really don't have the emotional like space to take on something else like and everything. So
okay.
Like recognizing
so what I'm hearing
and
is
accepting those things, I would say, can definitely cause some like conflict and some struggle with like some relation, especially in relationships, whether that's like you brought up, even war, like countries, individual personal relationships, group dynamics. I think it's with people, I would tend to agree.
Okay, so maybe that's a bit. So maybe the that big idea is a little too general to hit the all.
Maybe a little bit, but I would
Okay, I
say
would
it
agree with
covers a
that.
lot of like human like conflict or struggle between like people.
Okay, so not like man versus wild, but man versus man.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, yeah, that seems like a reasonable take. Now, where I'm going with this is I feel like the the expectations are the like unacceptance where like okay, this person is, they are doing their best even if for whatever reason, like I don't believe them, whatever my reasons are, like, oh, you could, but,
Yeah.
right? So my struggles are coming from me not being accepting or patient in scenarios and letting that lead to like blood boiling frustration. So,
I think
go
that's
ahead.
it's tough because everyone does have different levels of their expectations and all, and I definitely understand having like high expectations of people because I mean, and you said something I kind of disagree with there, but that everyone is trying their best. Like there are definitely times when people aren't and they're not putting in the effort that they could or are capable of and are fucking off and like leaving people hung out to dry. I don't think that's the
Hmm.
typical situation, especially in um, like like friendships or closer relationships.
Right.
I don't think that's as typical, but I would say overall there's definitely people who do not put the kind of effort that they should into things. Um, so that's kind of a mixed bag. But yeah, I get where you're coming from with your expectations kind of like that's your thought of it and maybe not seeing reasons why someone is not meeting that.
Right. And so that's creating that's creating issues of like non-compromise where we I just keep being met with impasse and impasse. So I where I'm getting to is with that I think in some of these moments, I tend to, and I may have said this before, but I tend to like catastrophize. And in my head, I'll go back through like every single dumb moment I've ever had, every like cringe thing I've ever said, every like, that was stupid or whatever. And it it takes you down this like whole long road, but the reality of the thing is like those small behaviors or those small moments or whatever it is, they have no influence on today or the thing that happened, and the thing that happened is going to have no influence on that thing. So when I was thinking about that, I was like, okay, so let's try something that we did before. And so this is my rose where I thought what worked before was basically sending a letter to my younger self and saying, "Hey, I forgive you, blah blah blah, you didn't understand, it wasn't your fault, da da da." And that like really lifted a weight. So that's where I started. And I just started thinking of all of the things like who would I want to apologize to, or like what would I want to forgive myself for? Like I asked that question, and all these scenarios started popping up in my head of like, oh well, you really fucked that up. Well, that was a shining moment right there, and you could have did better there. So all these moments, I just kept saying to myself like, you know what? I forgive you for that. You didn't know any better. You were stupid. You were this. You were that. Whatever. But it was effectively not me. It was effectively not me. Yes, it happened and I was the one that did it, but like I said before, it doesn't it doesn't have any effect on today, and today doesn't have any effect on it. And as I began to just say, like, hey, I forgive you, I sent some like apologies out of my head where I was like, hey, I know actually reaching out probably isn't the thing to do, right? So it's just like, hey, just send that energy that way and just try and make peace with the scenario. So I did a whole bunch of that stuff. And then it popped in, and this is the seed, where I was like, all of these moments of frustration, the main person is Sarah that has to deal with it. And it's not that like I'm taking it out on her, but she only sees me in these like manic, like elevated states, right? And I'm like, fuck this and fuck that, blah blah blah. And what I'm realizing is maybe I'm taking that a little bit for granted, and it's like I have to refocus. I have to bring my focus back to the things that really matter, and that is her. That's got to be the top priority, because if I don't have her, I don't have the business. If I don't have the business, I don't have right, like all of these ideas are nested in that one thing going really well, and I'm finding that I'm getting further and further away from being able to do that one thing really well, which is just like be her partner, be her confidant, her whatever. And I'm letting the to use like an odd term, but letting like the shadow side take over, and just it's all just frustration and, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that and I need this better, and this person didn't come through, and fuck this and fuck that. It's like you're just gonna shove all of these things away, and then it's kind of like, yeah, be careful what you wish for, right? Like, yeah. Then it all will be gone,
Right.
and then check in and see how you feel. So I did that checking in now before, I get rid of everybody, and I was like, forgiveness is where I wanted to start. And I just said, man, all these moments that you just like beat yourself up for, like they're the same ones that just come up over and over. And so I just said, I forgive you, man. I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. I just let it all go.
I think that's like a really good and healthy perspective to take. There's a couple of other things that, like you said, that brought some things to mind for me, like in regard to that. And so, like,
I want to hear about it.
The one thing I like typed up a couple quick notes for myself here, but like each person is like the main character of their own movie. Like you are the lead character in your life, and so with that being said, I've even come across instances of there's something that I feel bad about, there's something that I feel like I did that may have like hurt someone else's like feelings, whatever, or like really like I felt like an idiot, or I said something I shouldn't have, or out of anger, or like whatever. And like I've had times where I have mentioned some of those things in front of like the person, thinking like that they were probably sitting there like and thought about that periodically, like, oh, I can't believe Aaron did this when he was 10 years old, and like they don't even remember it because they have so many other things going on around them in their environment and their things that they're like, man, I said that stupid fucking thing to that girl. Like, right. Why couldn't I have just like said this? I would like, it would have gone so much better, or like whatever. So like you may be hyper analyzing like yourself, and I think everyone does that to some extent, and like your like times where you've fallen short and whatnot. But I think everyone is doing that and recognizing that everyone has those moments and those things that they're like, man, why did I do that? Like I shouldn't have. And it could be years ago, it could be days ago, but recognizing, and I think that's kind of the forgiveness part of just being like, hey, it's life, things happen. No, like you're not always going to say the right thing, do the right thing. If you did, then like life would be kind of probably a little bit boring. You don't. It's a little bit of you don't know the like how good things are without like the bad. Like because there's like if you only know like normal and good, then there's a lot smaller of a difference, a noticeable difference than like, oh, when things are like bad compared to good. Like you really get a sense of that. And so it's good that you're like recognizing like the good that you want to keep and everything, and using that as like a reason not to like focus on those negatives and all. And I think the other thing is just like you also have to, and it's something that I have been trying to do over the past couple of years, is there's when I've gone through bad experiences, negatives and things like that, is trying to like reframe my focus and kind of look towards positive things too. And like you can acknowledge the negatives, but if you're only acknowledging those and you're not acknowledging the positives and the good things that are going on, then you're also not being genuine to your experience. Like you are only looking at these negatives and, like you said, like the shadow, like shadow of everything, the dark cloud just like sitting above your head, when like just over there's like blue sky. So like you are a combination of all your experiences, good and bad. That's how you are the person you are now, as opposed to the person you were at that time. So yeah, like thinking through a lot of those things and just like trying to be like aware of like the good things too, I think could be helpful. And like something as easy as when I first started going back to therapy, I was journaling a little bit, and I was like pretty down and not very happy with a lot of things. And so I made an active effort to like write out a few things that were like positives from my day. Like whenever I journaled, I would say just write, like physically write out like good things in my life, whether it's like as simple as like I had good friends, I ate some really good food, and that like was good, like that, just simple things that kind of
like a gratitude journal,
kind of, just to like be more aware of those things, because I think that being aware allows you to change like your framing of things, including your expectations, and like being aware of like, hey, maybe like being like, I a lot of times don't feel like I have enough time to do everything that I want to and talk to everyone and spend time with all the people that I would love to. Other people's lives, I'm sure, are just as busy, and so that just kind of is an unfortunate part of life in terms of those things. So yeah,
I think there's definitely value in while trying to reframe some of the negatives, taking time to, note and look at the positives as well. And it's not to say, I think it's a weird distinction, but overall, it's not to say I believe I regret these things. Because like you said, I do firmly believe that like my experiences make me who I am. And overall, I think I like who I am, but I know there's just like glaring smudges that I really want to buff out. And I think that is like, that's a large component of it. And for example, I don't know if I told you about this, but recently I was invited back to like a group of friends who I had known back in high school. And there was a situation way back when I was like a kid, like elementary school, that led to us like not really being friends anymore. And it was something that like ate and ate and ate away at me all the way up until, modern day, a couple of months ago. They hit me up, want to play some video games, and every time I'm in the Discord call, this is all I can think of. Is just like that shitty thing that I did to them literally 15 years ago, until one time I had they were two brothers, until I had one of them in the Discord like by himself, and I was like, hey, I've got to come clean about this thing, like blah, blah, blah. And I laid it all out, and he just started laughing. He was like, dude, I didn't even remember that, but like now that you said it, blah, blah, blah. But it felt good. It felt good to get the weight off. But then, like you were saying, there's also that moment of like, yeah, shit. Obviously you're not going to remember that because like, it didn't end your life, right? But it's just funny how one-sided those things can be.
Oh yeah,
but
absolutely.
But then once you unload it, like I felt great, and now there's like I have no hang-ups. Like I just feel very free when engaging with them now, in a way that I think I may be able to, having done some of this, like, forgiveness and gratitude and whatever. So yeah, just a whole bunch of just like, just good stuff overall. That's my rose, thorn, and seed. We can keep it moving.
Well, and I like that it's like your rose, thorn, and seed. So you are trying to like look at all sides of it. So that's awesome.
Yeah. It can only go up from here.
Hell yeah. It's a good perspective. So,
yes.
Like you said, moving along into just kind of our first topics and everything, coming up to F1 testing and everything in a few weeks. We're about a month out from the first 3 days of testing in Spain, from February 23rd to the 25th. So that will be coming up 4 weeks from this Friday, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
and we didn't cover testing last year, but now that we're a little more in the know, we have a system set up in place. Obviously, we're going to be doing our best to bring you all the news. Maybe we'll I don't know. I don't want to, put any pins in anything, but the idea is I think it'll be fun to cover testing and see the like reveal and unveil of the new cars, see them out on track. I think that'll be a really fun thing to see firsthand, not just like, oh yeah, I heard testing was this weekend, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. To kind of like look at what we see that's maybe different or has changed between stuff from last season into this season. It'll give a good opportunity to learn a bit more and see a bit more about the vehicles. And like you said, the unveiling of cars, we've got a bunch of car launch dates that have been set, or, well, not a bunch, just a few, but Aston Martin, McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes have all announced their car launch dates. So Aston Martin is February 10th, McLaren February 11th, Ferrari the 17th, and Mercedes the 18th. So those will be coming up as well. 6 more teams to kind of keep an eye out for and see what they're planning to do and how soon we can get eyes on those new liveries.
Yeah, I'm so stoked to see the new wings and all the little ways that the teams break the rules.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It'll be good. But I did also I wanted to mention the FIA statement that they came out with about this past season's final race. And essentially that they're going to be looking into the safety car procedure that happened at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. And it seems like it will be more of an evaluation of how things should go and kind of bringing that to the teams. Not necessarily anything is going to change from the end of last season, but I think that this will probably end up with some new, more specific regulations in place for some of those things. So
Hmm.
we'll see what they have to say, but we do have to wait until the second winter testing in Bahrain in March. So that kind of blows that we have to wait that long,
But it's not like we're waiting for some revelatory piece of information or change of perspective. Like you said, I really believe it's just like it's going to stand, and they're basically just going to say, "Hey, this is our position moving forward." There'll
yeah.
probably be a couple of stipulations of like if-then statements, and that's going to be the end of it.
Yeah, and I think the reason that I'm like, I'm just waiting is I think I'm just also itching for F1 to be back.
Oh,
I
100%.
know talking with Colleen and everything, even she's said, I mentioned it last week, that she's like she's like, I kind of miss F1, and she's like brought it up a little bit here and there. Like, oh, like anything new going on? And I'm
That's
like,
funny.
nope. Just same old off season, nothing to report as of yet. So
Well, because effectively it's like it's just a lazy morning on the couch together on a Sunday. So you can see how the lady would enjoy that.
yeah,
Even
definitely.
though there's the sounds of fucking real, real, real in the background. I know that was a terrible F1 engine, but
It's just it's a Haas.
yeah, there you go. It's a Haas at the end of running.
Yeah. I think it's a little bit of that, but also a little bit of just the um I think she like enjoys how into it I get. So then
Ah,
she like I enjoy doing stuff with her that she like enjoys, whether it's watching certain TV shows or like watching movies, letting
mm,
her DJ in the car. Like I enjoy that. So I think she's like, oh, this is something he likes, and so I'm like enjoy kind of watching him like that. So
that's fun.
yeah, it's cool. So
Hmm.
but
Bring F1
definitely
back.
definitely looking forward to F1. I've been watching just lots of old race highlights and stuff like that. So,
Now, when you're watching race highlights, how do you pick what you're gonna watch? Do you think of a track? Do you think of a racer? Do you like think of, oh, well, I remember they talked about like, 85 Suzuka. I'm gonna go back and let me check that out. Like how are you picking?
occasionally I'll look at like kind of top races from previous years, or just
Gotcha.
like um, something like some sort of exciting title fight or some crazy whatever that happened.
Hmm.
But honestly, a lot of times it's just my YouTube feed just being like, oh, check out this F1 like race highlight video from 3 years ago, or from like this is
Okay,
Danny
gotcha.
Ricciardo's Monaco pole position lap from 2016 or
Nice.
whatever.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but yeah, definitely component is just like what they throw up in front of me on my YouTube feed. But
Gotcha.
I do seek some out specifically.
Now, are there any racers that you've taken to that are no longer on the track? Like who's somebody that you really like that you only would have learned because you've watched old highlights? Like somebody from like '08, or is there somebody from like the '90s that you really enjoy?
Um, I kind of enjoyed just in general the time period where like Damon Hill was driving, and now him being on like some broadcasts and everything.
Mhm.
It's been like interesting looking back and seeing some of his like races and everything. And I also just really enjoy, I think, that kind of time period of the racing. Everything
Okay.
seems a little bit less refined, but I think one that sticks out that I like enjoy watching consistently is just in general the season that Braun Racing was in,
Okay.
with Ross Braun's team and everything. It's such a weird outlier in terms of like seasons and championships, because
Mm-hmm.
you just have like all these teams like all over the place that have been like in F1 for a really long time, not a long time. Like Williams has been around forever and they've had like lots of success in the past and like all of these different things. And then Braun Racing comes in, as like a first year team, goes on to win the constructors championship. I think they went 1-2 in the first race. It was so they were, I think, a yeah, so they were.
Damn, I just lost you.
Oh, you there?
Now I am.
Cool. Yeah, you froze for a hot sec, but
I think we both froze.
yeah. Well, you froze on my screen, so I'm
Gotcha.
assuming
Well,
I did the same.
yep.
But yeah, they bought out the Honda Racing F1 team in '09, and then just immediately went in and ended up winning the Constructors Championship. It was just strange.
Now, was this the first time that happened with a team? Because I don't remember learning about this. That's fascinating.
So I don't know if there's any other team, like one-off teams. I'd have to go back and kind of dig through, but I don't believe there's been any other teams that their first year in F1 they just came in and won the constructors. And their driver lineup for that season was Rubens Barrichello and Jensen Button. So it was like a really solid like driver lineup and everything.
Yeah.
And then Mercedes, after that 1 year, Mercedes took over the Braun GP spot in F1 in 2010, I believe. So
And then just started winning.
yeah. So they just had that one little blip. But I think that's why it's so interesting to me is like, I obviously they had to have taken a lot of aspects of the previous teams, like machinery and car and everything, when they bought them out. But to be able to improve on it to the point that they ended up being like constructor champion, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, who was the driver champion that year?
Driver champion, let me double check.
Because if they had, go ahead.
I think it was Barrichello, but I'm
Okay,
not.
cool. So they got both that year then. If he
No,
was
it was Button. So what? It was both, but it was Jensen Button.
okay, wow, that's awesome. Because that's not only like getting the constructors and then maybe having some other driver win, but getting both in the same year and their maiden year as well. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and Honda had been a ninth place team the year before.
Oh wow.
So the ninth out of 11, there were 11 teams at the time, or I
Okay.
guess, yeah. But the one team did not race after the first four races, so I'm not sure what happened there. But to go from a ninth place team, buy out the team and everything, and then immediately become a constructor is a pretty wild thing. So I think that's like one of the more interesting stories and some of the races that I've looked back on that I'm like, that's like, it's pretty cool and interesting. There were some races that they had their elbows out a good bit too, which is always pretty fun and exciting. The first race of that season was, or I believe it was the first race of that season, was like just intense, like people bumping into each other and like gaining positions because of that stuff, and like to the point that Braun went 1-2 in that first race.
Oh wow.
But from like some moves by, I think Barrichello had a couple where he like tried to lunge up the inside in a Yuki Tsunoda-esque way at the end of the season in Abu Dhabi when he bumped, I think it was Seb Vettel out.
Oh yeah.
Like similar to that where Yuki was fine, but the other guy wasn't. And like there's no sort of penalty or anything that gets laid out. They're just like, oh, that's racing. Like people bump into each other.
Now, are you hearing radio messages from these races?
No. So,
Gotcha. Okay, it's just the footage
just the footage
and
with
the commentators.
yeah. So they have the
That's
commentary
exciting.
and everything for the highlights of it and all. But yeah, definitely an interesting one.
Very cool. I've heard. Sorry to just pause. I'm thinking what is Ross Braun doing today? Because I still hear his name
Yeah, so
and
Ross,
not just like talking about him.
he is, I believe, so he is a British Formula One managing director of motorsports and technical direction.
Okay.
what is it? So he is the Formula One managing director of motorsports and technical director from 2017 till now. He was previously, I guess, a team principal or technical director for a number of teams previously. So Benetton, Ferrari, Honda, Braun, Mercedes, and then now working for Formula One.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool.
So-
Now, I would have guessed that he had worked with McLaren. I'm glad I didn't just throw that out there.
Well, that's like the one that he missed.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
so.
And my dumbass, that was the one I was about to be like, oh, and McLaren too, huh? This is how much I don't know. So I'm glad I kept my fucking mouth shut.
No, but I mean, he is like widely renowned. I'm just looking at, I'm reading more up on him as we're talking, but he earned a lot of his fame, it says on his Wikipedia page, as the mastermind behind Schumacher's 7 championship titles. So he was with Ferrari during that, the Michael Schumacher era.
Gotcha. That's really cool.
Which I can imagine also led to him bringing in Schumacher to drive for Mercedes alongside Jenson Button for a couple seasons, I believe 2009, 2000 or 2010, 2011 maybe. So
Did you ever hear the story about how I'm pretty sure it's Michael Schumacher got his drive?
I have, but
There was another driver that like went to jail the day before or the same day or whatever, and like he was just on the call list.
yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, he like lied about having driven at the track before or something like that, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like come on and drive," and he just put on a freaking show, fake it till you make it.
So that would have been them Ross Braun who he was shysting. That's fun.
Yeah. So he's been around for quite some time.
Yeah, and let me bring it back to what you had originally said. You said you enjoy watching the era of like Damon Hill. I think what's so fascinating about Damon Hill and why I really enjoy listening to him on, whatever broadcasts is he came in where he was coming in when the old guard was leaving, but then also like when all these new legends were coming in or like to be legends. Yeah. So it's crazy how his career, he was like bumping shoulders with greats from like two different eras.
Yeah, he was
I
kind
think
of
that's fascinating.
like a linchpin in the middle of that and everything.
Mm.
And I kind of wonder, like, you wonder, like, where are we at in that F1 life cycle a little bit, where there's these eras of, like, you could say that from there was another like gap era kind of between when Schumacher retired the first time up until like Lewis was really coming into his own. There's like a
Hmm.
probably I'd say Lewis on Mercedes, even though he did have the one title with McLaren. Um,
Hmm.
uh, he
But then there's also like Alonso, Vettel.
yeah.
Well, and they'll be phasing out, so it
Well,
seems like we're coming into like a new.
that's kind of what I'm thinking is
Yep.
like now. So it was like Hill was that come leading up to from like looking at people that he was next to like Mansell, Prost, Brundle,
Hmm.
Hakkinen, like
Yep.
those like huge names that are so known in the F1 world.
Yep.
And then he kind of bridged that gap to Schumacher, and then yeah, I guess you could maybe say that like Vettel and Alonso were maybe kind of similar, bridging into the like Lewis Hamilton dominance. Um,
Hmm.
but I think yeah, we may be kind of
Well,
going into that new guard era a little bit again with some of the older drivers retiring. We have a lot of younger drivers that have gotten big drives. I mean, you've got Max on Red Bull. You have
hmm
George Russell coming up into
Russell.
Mercedes.
Hmm.
Lando. You have Leclerc and Sainz both
Hmm.
on Ferrari. Like there are a lot of like younger drivers, and with like I'd be curious. I'd have to do a little bit of math, but the average driver age from last year to this year, I would say probably dropped at least a little bit with like Kimmy
Oh
leaving.
yeah, I'm sure it
Like that
went down a
probably
decent bit.
drops it like close to a year, if not
Hmm.
more, to the average driver age. So
Yeah. Well, Guan Yu Zhou is like he's like 12, so that's gonna bring it down dramatically.
yeah, like the disparity between Kimmy
Hmm.
and Guan Yu Zhou. Uh,
Well,
and then
think about
Albon is
this.
like another young driver, whatever you like, maybe not a young superstar. Maybe he'll have a good drive coming back. You don't know, but
Sure. Well, think of like thinking in terms of eras. What about like, you kind of lump in tell me if you think along the same lines. It's kind of like I'll say there's like the vintage years in my head and then like Prost and Senna is like that's like an era in my opinion or not in my opinion because I know nothing but in my like just when I'm thinking
right.
about it there's the Damon Hill that bridged into where you had like Michael Schumacher, Mansell, and but I think Nigel Mansell like raced maybe even like a few years before. Basically what I'm trying to get at is it feels like the time that we're leaving is like the Lewis Hamilton era. I think this will be remembered as like just the time of Hamilton when he just
Oh,
like was winning.
yeah, I would definitely agree. Kind of like the Schumacher era. It's not a.
Hmm.
I could imagine
There's not
the
multiple names that are being
right. I could
brought to
imagine like
mind.
this upcoming stretch potentially being a little bit of that. We'll see. I mean, Max could also be very dominant, and we could just roll from one era into the next. But
Right.
I mean, talking about Damon Hill and everything with the in between, yeah, I mean, he had a number of other like well-known racers that were alongside him in that in-between, but none that were that extremely like dominant. I mean, David Coulthard was in there. You've also
He's more
got
well known than winning, yes, though.
right, exactly. So like you
Right.
have like known names. It's not like a dead time or anything for F1. It's just there's no specific dominance that's like even with the Prosenna era, like those two were just like very, very dominant
Right.
against each other and everything. So yeah, there's a few other names in there, but yeah, it's kind of a little lull in the F1. I guess like dominance, or I guess not a lull, but every like more teams were competitive than
Yes.
like
Yes. That's the.
individual standouts. So
I think that's a good way to think about it.
yeah,
And this is just obviously this is just what I'm able to put together from like the data that I have. Obviously there's a million and one names that I don't know, that I don't think of, and blah blah blah, but yeah, that's just, you know, my loose understanding of it all.
no, I think that we have a decent bit. It's just there's a lot of history to catch
Yeah.
up on. So
And we're coming in at the, like, you know, where it's like peaking or on its way up, I guess, you know, for in modern times, because the way I'm beginning to understand it is like it was nuts and bolts compared to what it is today.
yeah, I
So
think
yeah, go ahead.
I think the amount of content too is also makes it tough to like learn as much about some of the historical stuff. Like
That's
you
true.
all only have so many videos of old interviews or old races or things like that that you can still go back and like watch
Yeah,
potentially.
that's a great point.
But there's constantly new F1 content from new like different YouTube creators, different like people like us talking about F1 and everything. So there's such an influx of content that it can be hard to almost go back when there's so much current
Yep.
content that you can watch and fill that time with.
Oh yeah. Yeah, why go back and take a look at the old when there's so much new?
Or like where do you find time to do it all?
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, that's kind of got to be like your shtick. Like, remember the kid in high school that, like, you know, he loved like old '70s stuff, and it was all about the, you know, the clothes, and the like all of it. Like, that's kind of got to be like your shtick,
you
right?
got to
It's
be
like
all in. You have to.
exactly where. To a certain degree, like, you probably don't even care about modern Formula One. You're just like, oh yeah, this is my era. Like, I've watched, like, you know, Suzuka 85 15 times. Like, that's real racing.
I like how in the the F1 game you can race on old tracks with old cars.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
That's funny.
it's cool getting to look at some of that stuff and like come across weird things like the Braun GP season
Yeah.
and everything. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the upcoming races, but I'll definitely have some stuff to fill my time with over the next few weeks.
Yeah, big time. Well, they have like every race in the archives, which is crazy. Like, if you wanted to, you could watch like damn near every race that's
Yeah,
ever
which
happened.
is pretty insane.
Yeah. But I don't think I'll be getting that done anytime soon.
No,
I just want to see Max win, 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 win.
I'd be all right with that.
Me too.
No
Me
complaints on
too,
this
my
end.
friend. Well, speaking of win, 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 we have a bunch of teams undefeated in League of Legends, in China, LCK, all sorts of crazy stuff going on. Now, do you want to start? Well, do you want to do the good news first or the bad news first?
Um, let's do the bad news first.
All right, North America it is.
Yep, let's get that rolling through and get to some interesting stuff in other regions as well. So
So two teams undefeated in North America, Cloud9, Evil Geniuses, and then a bunch of, just a bunch of middling score lines. Now, just give me first impressions of North America, teams, players. What were you thinking?
Well, I think it's just interesting with the lock-in tournament because we have, as you had mentioned with me as we were kind of chatting before the podcast, and everything, a number of teams don't have their full lineups. Golden Guardians decided to field their academy roster, so they have, which is kind of interesting that just looking at that and Ryoma and Stixay being on academy after having some LCS playtime and all for a number of years. So, but I feel like there are a lot of teams that have some well-known names on the academy. Cloud9 as well, fielding a number of components due to visa issues. So Sven playing, starting in the LCS lineup, Darshan starting in that lineup. I believe Isles is going to be on the academy as well. So kind of a half and half with them, and then TSM as well, using their entire academy roster for the lock-in tournament, because the lock-in tournament means nothing. There's no, the only thing that you can say comes out of it is the prize pool, where the first place team wins 100% of the prize money, and that's it. So,
well, that's pretty exciting, because if for whatever reason it is one of the, mid-tier, bottom-tier teams, that boost of, income could mean, some infrastructure, a coach payroll or whatever. So that could be pretty big. But like you said, yeah, you're right. The lock-in tournament doesn't account for a whole lot. But is there anything you feel like that is worth talking about that you want to get into?
I think it was just interesting, looking at the LCS, there was a very consistent meta that seems to have kind of come out through everything. The AD carry, though, that really kind of surprised me a little bit more that he would be so highly picked was the Aphelios. I'm not sure exactly what changed, because recently, from what I was listening to and looking into in terms of the meta and all, it seemed as though Jinx, Ezreal, who else? Caitlyn were going to be pretty strong. And there are also a lot more kind of tank support picks than I expected. I expected more Lulus and Yumis, but we did get a lot of the Nautilus, the Thresh, the Leona, and a lot of that's still coming out. I think the lack of the Ezreal pick, though, was really strange to me. And the lack of the Corki picks for the mid lane, because Corki was only banned first round of bans twice in the LCS, and I would say Corki seems to be an extremely strong mid lane champion. So that was kind of just not what I expected, I think, coming into this season.
And unfortunately, if you look at TSM played, it looks like TSM. There's no way I'm looking at the right thing. Yeah, no, I'm not looking at the right thing. Yeah, that was a different thing. Okay, cool. Because what I was going to say was TSM had picked Corki twice in the mid lane and lost, but that was the academy. What I was going to say about the Corki is it doesn't feel like, it feels like the lane pressure is good, the poke is solid, the late game damage is great, but there's something about the way they're playing the package and the Valkyrie it's like they want him to be like an engager or something, and the Corki just ends up putting himself in a really bad position and just dying.
Yeah. And I
So
mean,
maybe that's something.
he still did have a pretty high pick ban rate, but I
Yeah,
just didn't expect to see him go like unpicked or banned like at all.
gotcha.
And I
Okay, I
expected him to
understand.
be like, I mean, for him to only get banned out in the first round of picks twice, I expected him to be picked up immediately in like every single one of those games.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
To comment on the Aphelios though, I actually think it's Jinx, Kate, or I think it's Kate, Jinx, Aphelios, and then Ezreal. Because a lot of what we're seeing, it seems anyway, is they want to be pairing that Ezreal with like the Yumi or like the Lulu or something, and then it's the Caitlyn that's getting banned a bunch, and then it's got to be the Jinx and Aphelios as like that second tier where Kate is top tier. Um,
yeah,
so
I
I
just
do think we will see
expected
the Ezreal.
I expected the Ezreal to like um Ezreal is very strong right now with the cooldown
Definitely,
reduction, the Sheen
definitely.
items, and everything. I was talking to my roommate Willie about it, and like he is playing pretty consistently, so he kind of fills me in on some of the like game knowledge that I might be missing in terms of items and whatnot. But
Hmm.
Ezreal can essentially with like the typical builds be getting Sheen proc for percent health on every single Q with a Q that has over 50% cooldown reduction that also gets its cooldown reduction every time you hit a Q. Like there's a lot of components that I just feel like it would be a very strong pick, but yeah, I think maybe it's due to the heavy number of like engage junglers and like supports that we're seeing, like the
Hmm.
Nautilus, Leona, Thresh, or in the jungle, the Jarvan and the Xin
Yeah.
that if you use your E poorly because you don't have the range of some of those other 80 carries, then you can just get blown up. So
Hmm.
I feel like that probably is part of it, but
There may be something to be said too with how much they want to be pushing turrets and looking for those plates in the bottom lane. Maybe that is why they're looking for the Jinx and the Aphelios for just the raw damage capabilities. I know Aphelios doesn't have like the highest attack speed, but depending on what gun combo you get, you can chunk a turret pretty well. But yeah, those are some pretty interesting observations about the bottom lane. But yeah, overall, like I said offline, like it just doesn't feel that interesting to talk about NA overall, just because it is like a bunch of the academy players. It all just feels very exhibition like. The one thing I did see is it is kind of fun to watch these academy players pop off because they are really aggressive. They play differently. They think differently about the game than pros do. So it's fun to see. But like a lot of times, you just get like I don't know. They just get like weirdly outplayed and try and pick ban weird. So yeah, overall, just like not really impressed. Like you got the like a Kali pick in the TSM game. Cloud9 just ate them up.
yeah.
So yeah, overall, I don't think North America has been the most exciting.
No, I don't think so. But like you said, it is interesting. And it's also, I think, interesting for the players that we haven't seen or that are like newer on lineups, just kind of gauging how quality they are.
Yeah,
Looking at, big thing that I was interested to see is how Fudge did with his switch to mid lane for Cloud9. And so seeing him just kind of just be consistently solid against a number of teams. I that was good to see. And of course, they still do have to play 100 Thieves, so they have a tough matchup ahead of them.
yeah.
But I feel like he has kind of settled in already pretty easily. But seeing like I think it's Tukil. I'm not sure how his name is exactly pronounced for FlyQuest, their mid laner.
Okay. Yep.
Someone who I really didn't know much about coming in, and he's played like pretty decently. They beat FlyQuest beat 100 Thieves in their matchup.
Which was surprising, by the way. I thought that was 100 Thieves for sure.
Yeah, I really didn't expect that. I don't think most people did.
Sure.
And then just the Team Liquid lineup with Bjergsen and Hans Sama and all. I thought that has been it. It's just fun to kind of watch those in terms of either where are these players now and like how like are they still up to their standard, or are they kind of falling off, or new players that we're getting to learn before the actual season, I guess, starts.
Yeah. There's I wanted to touch on, before we move off at NA, I wanted to touch on Team Liquid because it is super fun, to watch Bjergsen again. He, I'm not sure, has the same spark yet that he has had, although I think with the way Liquid were playing, it's obvious he's going to level up over the course of the split. So that's really exciting. And then before we move on to some of the other regions where we can talk about like the Dragon Souls and game time and stuff like this, I wanted to ask you about Thresh in competitive, because since he was released, he has been a mainstay of pick and bans all over the world. And watching Ayla, the support that Team Liquid had, or has for the lock-in currently, when I was watching Ayla play, it was very reminiscent of, like, I was just getting flashbacks of like all these other hooks throughout League's like competitive history. So I wanted to ask you, and we can expand this into as large of a conversation as you want, but I wanted to ask you, what do you think it takes for a champion to become such a mainstay in the landscape of League of Legends?
I think that they kind of have to do a little bit of everything. Like, you can't be a niche pick and expect to have that same kind of relevancy throughout. For example, Orianna has always been around, always playable. Bjergsen played it against Dignitas on day 2. It has never really been touched that heavily in terms of numbers. There haven't been a ton of changes, buffs, nerfs. It's not always the strongest, but it's consistent. You can always... you have a little bit of everything. You have damage with your QW combo. You have shielding for yourself. You have your ultimate that can be that can provide CC or engage or peel for your team. So you kind of have all those components of the champion. With Thresh, he's not like ultra tank, but he's not squishy. He has a lot of good CC. He has the ability to save someone with the lantern. He has the ability to engage on someone with the lantern. He can provide that kind of barrier with his ultimate in team fights and kind of force people to play and position differently and everything. So he has a lot of the components of different supports and does all of them to a pretty good level. Whereas other supports that you may look at as similar, like say Nautilus, don't have all of that. Nautilus, you have that ult and your Q to kind of engage, but you have a lot less peel.
Mm-hmm.
as Nautilus. You have a little bit of tankiness with your shield, but it's just not quite the same. He can't do as much.
Right. So you need like
Kind of,
you
I guess, like
need
well-rounded is like
right.
the best like phrase for it.
Yeah. I just have such a hard time seeing well, I'll say it like this. I have such a hard time being objective about a champion like Thresh just because like you see him all the time. He's everywhere that like there are so many different levels of Thresh play that it's so like to me Thresh is when I think of competitive League of Legends, he's the champion that I think of. That was what was solidified in my mind. I think this weekend watching these games, and it wasn't just like some North American support, but like he was playing in a way that like transcended the player controlling the champion. It was like watching Faker play Zed, where like it's more than Faker with his hands on his keyboard and a mouse. It looks like he is Zed inside the game. Like
Yeah.
he's totally like everything is fluid, it's smooth motion, and just seeing that I was like, God damn, this is like Thresh is competitive League of Legends in my mind. Just the way you can chain everything together, you can use the map in ways that no other champion can, other than maybe Bard. But like, and that's even like kind of thinking outside the box, where like Bard has the portal, but because Thresh can like hook minion camps and like the lantern over things, like he is so dynamic, and I think that's I think that's what you were getting to is the champions have to be dynamic for them to be strong in competitive play.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that like Thresh came out at a very good time for himself as well, just because he is at a good time period where his kit was given a lot of different components and everything.
Yeah.
It wasn't very what like there's not like a singular focus. I
Hmm.
guess with his champion design, which allows him to play in a lot of different ways and be
Yeah.
aggressive, be protective, like peel, engage. Where there are some champions that do kind of have like that singular like thing, like Lux, for example.
Hmm.
Yeah, try and
He got picked as support.
yeah, you try
That's a
to
good call. Is the Lux?
yeah, like you're trying to throw out and poke down and get damage by staying far away, and then you
Yeah.
try and lock someone down and do a lot of damage at one time. You don't really like yeah, technically your Q can disengage for you or pick someone off, but it's not like an engage tool or a disengage tool like as much
Right.
as it is just part of doing your singular focus, which is hit them from far away where they like can't reach me, and
Right.
then
And
get them
laser beam
low.
them.
Yeah, get them low enough that my laser beam makes them go bye bye. Like
Right.
it's
Well, it's so crazy because like so and I talk about this guy all the time. I'm like a nostalgist or something. But like I don't think you could have the best player in the world be a support if Thresh didn't exist in that year. Like, do you think Mata is ever called the best player in the world if he wasn't able to to show off on Thresh?
no, I
You
and I
know?
mean that's like the same thing. Mad Life, like he was so like played a lot of Thresh and was really strong on it. His like I mean, the Mad Life play is a Blitzcrank hook, but like when I think of Mad Life, even though that is the play that got the
You
like
could do it with Thresh
predictive,
too.
well, yeah,
Predict
that,
Flash.
but like I think that extremely more common to like have that kind of play on Thresh. And like, so even like the Mad Life hook, I typically think of Thresh being the champion doing that as opposed to
Me
Blitzcrank.
too. Right.
So I think, yeah, like being dynamic, and I think having playmaking like potential with like, I mean, Thresh and Oriana and those champions have their downsides too,
For
because
sure. Yeah, they're not
if
perfect.
you're above average at everything, then there's gonna always be something that's better at each individual thing than you.
Right. Like Alistair engages better, Lulu peels better.
So there's
Yeah.
always like something that might be able to outdo you in the moment, but to play a well-rounded style, Thresh is like a perfect kind of fit for that.
Yeah.
So
And obviously, welcome to 2022. Players were picking up Thresh all weekend long. So obviously, still a mainstay in competitive. That was a really interesting conversation. Actually, I'm happy to pick your brain about that because it is like you see these things so much. It's like a rise or a rumble or something. Like when it comes time for it, it's their kit just does so much you put yourself at a disadvantage to not pick them kind of thing.
yeah,
So yeah, that's super interesting. Now, do you want to move across the pond? You want to talk about EU a little bit?
yeah, definitely. And so looking at the LEC, there wasn't. I watched some games. I didn't watch like an extreme amount or
Sure.
anything. It was more. Kind of I've been watching it a little similarly to how I was watching the lock-in tournament for NA,
Yeah.
and just trying to get used to some of the new names on different teams and seeing how that kind of goes. The Fnatic lineup with Razork coming in the jungle, and they have a pretty consistent group from previously. G2 though having a lot of changes. So only really keeping Caps and Yankos
Mm-hmm.
in the mid and jungle, bringing Broken Blade, formerly of TSM,
Mm-hmm.
and then Flacked and Targamas in the bot lane. So there's a lot of changes there after seeing so many star-studded lineups, and then a team like the one that was like the most intriguing, of course, was the super team, EU's new super team alliance. Here we come
Mm-hmm.
of Vitality with Alfari, Self-Made Perks, Karzi, and Labrov, who they have actually just not been doing very well. They're 0-3.
Oh, three. Yeah.
I think Labrov is probably going to get a lot of flack for that, which I don't think is necessarily like warranted.
Hmm.
I think he is just he's learning, and he's playing with all these like superstars and everything, and so I think just due to that fact, he's going to get criticism when they lose more so than everyone
Right.
else. Because everyone else, they're like, "Oh, that's my favorite player. That's my favorite player." That's like
Mm.
you don't want to like shit talk the superstars of the team. You put it on the
Sure.
guy who's the odd man out. But I think he's performed pretty well. They just don't seem to quite have the like teamwork. It's not the word that I wanted to use, but they haven't figured out that that teamwork and how they want to play together and everything. They're
Right.
still they seem to not quite all be on the same page, and so watching them not be very successful so far has been pretty interesting as well. So
Well, and it's tough because, I know just from, us as fans taking away from our like analyst hats a little bit, you were a big Alfari fan, we're big Perks fans. Karzi like popped off. I know me and you said his name a lot last year. So there are names that are these players are worth watching, but you're right, they just couldn't bring it all together. And I'll say this, like, Perks doesn't look that good not on Silas.
Yeah, he hasn't really impressed me a lot so far,
Right.
and of course we'll get to see more. And I think part of that again is due to some just adjustments and getting used to the new lineup and who you're playing with and everything. Like especially jungle mid synergy is huge, and so that's
Hmm.
something that's going to build up. I'm sure there's a bit of that where he's overplaying certain things that he would in a normal circumstance, where he and his jungler are like working together very well and kind of on the same page. So I think because of his play style, it happened sometimes in on Cloud Nine in the LCS as well this
Hmm.
past year, where he was just overplaying because he's so used to just outplaying people,
Hmm.
where he didn't need the synergy as strongly with the jungler. But I think that it's teams are getting better. Like teams are good, and it you have to kind of have all those pieces of the puzzle, because the meta, like the not the meta, like the macro play and everything, really
It
you
matters so much more.
have to have such a strong team macro, and like be able to work together towards that goal, especially with the dragons, and how important the different like objectives are on the map.
Right. Yeah, because if you have to be able to play the Rift Herald for Dragon or Dragon for Rift. You got to be able to do the tower dives, like the jungler role and the jungle mid role is so involved now and so complex that yeah, if you're not communicating, if you're not working together, seems like you're gonna have a bad time, and it doesn't seem like who is it, Self-Made and
Mm-hmm.
Perks are really working that well. But hopefully, we can see them level up here.
Yeah, I think they'll get there. It's just going to take some time. But
Hmm.
talking just a little bit more about the region, one of the things that I was really happy to see, which we did not see a single time in the LCS. So, like you said, going from the bad to the good, the Diana jungle looks
Hmm.
so damn strong. And I
Yeah.
know that we had briefly mentioned after one of the recent patches that she had some buffs to damage
Hmm.
versus jungle monsters and everything.
Hmm.
But watching some of the play with the Diana and everything, especially in Mad Lions game versus Vitality in the first
Hmm.
game, watching Elyoya just dominate on that, ulting in and immediately or dashing in and immediately hitting that knock up for the Yasuo combo. Just the damage and the like how well that worked, and the wombo combo a little bit was really kind of crazy to watch. But just in general, watching Diana get played more, she is such a strong jungler. I think overall.
Yeah, I agree. And then it leaves you open for like these really interesting team comps where because you have AP damage from the jungle, you can maybe do like an AD mid or do some weird things with the top and the mid by alternating that damage or damage types I should say. But yeah, that's a really interesting pick. We're seeing a couple teams get involved. It looks like Rogue picked her up as well. So yeah, I think she's a really exciting champion.
Yeah, and lots of like very suited for the current like jungle meta as well. Everything
Oh
is
yeah.
very just divey.
Hmm.
So with like the Zinzao, the Jarvan, you have the Diana. So I mean, even to some extent, I guess Viego, but watching that is very very fun. I think like just watching people explode, or like the Diana doesn't do enough damage, and it's like if you don't kill someone with your combo, you're just like a sitting duck. So
Yeah, you're dead in the water. Well, then teams are like, depending on what you're playing, you've got, double exhaust possible and this and that. Like, so yeah, it can get shut down.
yeah. So that was one pick that I was really like very happy to kind of see come out a bit more in the LEC, and it was a pretty high pick ban as well. Throughout this first week, it was up there with an 80% pick ban. So
Yeah,
definitely
that's
one to
pretty
keep an
high.
eye out for. So that was solid. But I don't know if I had a ton of other LEC stuff. Did you have anything that you had watched or kind of
Yeah.
caught your eye?
I want to talk about it was the Mad Lions SK game. It was the longest game in LEC. Something about the Chemtech Soul. It feels like they're gonna have to change it because it felt like that was the single reason that that game was so long, because I think it was Mad Lions had to worry about the 10-man team fight, or the 5-on-10 team fight, because the Chemtech Soul, you get a revive, you get like a zombie version of you when you die for a couple of seconds. And so it just creates these like really intense team fights where you've got to kill these champions 2 times and like still retain your whole health bar. So I think Mad Lions was playing well around it. It was an exciting game and really fun. But I have to say, once they had the Chemtech Soul, it felt like it was just over. And like the sheer numbers were just gonna. It didn't feel like the Chemtech Soul was beatable.
Do you know if the Chemtech Soul came out in the FlyQuest TSM um, series or matchup? Because that was a 50-minute game as well. That was the longest in the LCS. I don't know.
I think it was. I think it did come to a Chemtech Soul, or at least it got to Chemtech Rift. I know that.
Gotcha.
Because they were talking about the vision pockets and this and that. So maybe they got Soul and were just able to win with it right away, or whatever. Because I only remember it being a big factor in the Mad Lions SK game. But yeah, it feels like just having infinite revives is it doesn't feel healthy. Like these people are buying the Zonias, the Guardian Angel, and then they've got the extra stopwatch, and then the Chemtech Soul. It's like, dude, like you're never gonna fucking kill these people. And then on top of it, you put damage on those items too, so there's no downside to buying them.
What
Like
happens?
Zonia's has.
Did
Go
we
ahead.
see a Chemtech Soul with a Scion in the game? What happens?
We did. Yeah, he has 3 lives.
That's yeah, like
It's just crazy. I think once I'm no game designer, I'm no game balancer. I don't know about these things, but it just feels like once you proc your zombie mode, that should be it. You should only get one, because other than that, like, so the team then has to, like, not only do they have to win that one miraculous fight where they kill all 5 of your people, kill all the revives, they have 2 people left, they're able to push a couple towers. Like, that should be enough. They shouldn't have to do that over and over and over again.
yeah.
It Maybe they were going for like this like zombie horde feel or whatever, like a little mini game once you get that, but it felt like unbeatable. And hopefully there's some balance changes that they can make, because it wasn't that satisfying, in like it wasn't that exciting. It was just like, okay, when will this eventually just overwhelm them?
I think it would be maybe better to have it be kind of like the I'm blanking on which item it is, but the It's the one where they get the like liches or
Yeah,
licks
the
afterwards.
Lysandra item,
Yeah,
the frost thing, whatever.
yeah. So maybe if it was just like that, where like a zombie of them just runs towards whatever and like does splash damage or something,
Hmm.
runs towards the
They can like
closest
use
enemy. But
abilities,
yeah,
auto
they
attacks,
can
everything.
auto like I think it would be probably healthier if like hey you still have it but like it does more of like that kind of thing as opposed
Right.
to like you having full control and being able to like revive on Ezreal and EQ and like do all that crazy stuff going in. So
So that was of this weekend's games, of all the matches, that was the one that seemed like the balance changes that Riot made actively made for like this seems like a wonky game here that we've got. But everything else seemed like really reasonable. I just hope that we don't run into a Chemtech Soul that often because it seems busted.
yeah. And I think if you're looking like getting that late in the game, you don't want it to be decided by like one team literally wins the team fight and the other team wins
Just
the
has a
game
zombie
because
Tristana.
yeah, because like they got that soul like buffs and extra damage and things like that because you got that objective. Cool, that's
Hmm.
a bit much, so I feel you on that.
Yes, that was tough, but yeah, overall, I thought LEC was pretty exciting. Uh, the perks thing, like overall disappointing because I really enjoyed that or him on Cloud 9 and all that. But yeah, looking forward to seeing more of the LEC for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely fun to kind of check that out. And I think we'll see all the teams just kind of get a little bit more like teamwork going and kind of flow going amongst themselves and everything. Um, but moving forward a little bit into, I thought we'd hit LCK before we hit the LPL.
Sure.
So looking at the LCK, we haven't had too many games. Most teams have played just two best of series, and then there's a couple that have gotten into their third. But just coming out from them, um, I think we see a lot of kind of key LCK champions that have stayed in meta even though or have gotten some play even though they aren't really being played in other regions. Like
Mm-hmm.
comfort LCK comfort picks. Seeing T1 play the Nidalee was one.
Mm-hmm.
The Rise coming out, of course, in a number of different games for different teams. I don't think saw the Rise in the LCS or LEC.
I don't think so.
And then even the Varus coming out a number of times throughout
Mm-hmm.
that was one that we really didn't see at all. So those were some kind of LCK typical type picks that I was like, yeah, they've just got their own meta and their own things that they value, I guess, more.
Big time.
But otherwise, I would say it was relatively consistent to kind of what we're seeing on a number of the regions, particularly with like the jungle picks. So
Yeah. Yeah, so it doesn't seem like any of these regions, maybe on pure like player skill and macro teams would be maybe not as good or not as cohesive, but it doesn't feel like any teams are like way behind, like still playing like last year's meta or whatever. Obviously there's some like flavor choices here, but it does feel like most of the regions are doing the right things and playing competitive picks. Now this was literally this morning, but I felt very much like Prophet Crumbs or any of the times that these analysts were like predict something and pick and ban. So I was watching the Damwon series this morning, and in the pick and ban, I don't know what the fuck it was going on, but we had all the picks. So it was in game one. We had all the picks right up until so Sivir and Gnar were 4-5 on blue side for Damwon, or no, for Red Force it looks like. And I was thinking about like, okay, so Corki was banned, Caitlyn was banned. I was thinking about like late game team fights and this and that, and I literally had the thought to myself, I was like, I wonder when these teams are gonna pick up Sivir, because that just seems like the logical like extension of like 5v5 team fight comps. Like everybody's trying to go for the Dragon Souls and the Rift Heralds. Well, what better than a Sivir? So in my head, I'm just like, oh, like it felt like it was just a passing thought. It was just like, oh, I wonder when we'll see Sivir. And then blue pick 4 and 5, they literally locked in Sivir. I almost like fell out of my chair. I was like, what the fuck? Like here I am, just like total nobody. And I like was predicting an LCK pick. I was like, oh my God, I'm here. I'm an analyst. I did it. I was so excited. And then they ended up winning with the pick too. Like it went off. So yeah, that was super exciting. Obviously they paired her with the Yumi, so she has all the protection in the world with the spell shield. But yeah, it was super fun. I really love Korean League of Legends. Honestly, it's super fun, and not just because I'm predicting the picks, but I really like the players. I like the play style. It's super fast. It's super like, but even though it's fast, it's not loose. It feels all very tight. And Showmaker is just really fun to watch too. So yeah. I love being able to watch Damwon again.
Well, and I think it's the other funny thing like that, like I said about the kind of comfort picks for the LCK is like the consistency among the bands as well, which is just, it cracks me up how the same exact things are constantly like Renekton was banned in the first round of every single LCK game so far.
Yeah.
It has not made it out of the pick ban a single time. Caitlyn very high up there as well, which we have seen in other regions, but just like especially even like the Tryndamere. Tryndamere was banned out a decent bit and played a decent bit. So
did you ever think there would be a world where we were talking about like Tryndamere being banned in competitive?
Not really.
Aside from last year at Worlds, because I know there was
like
that
in
came up then.
in the history of League, I did not really expect that to happen because unlike a champion like Thresh, he is very binary. You run at people and slash, and then you spin away, and like
slap.
Like you're just hitting them with the strong right arm of the law. So
funny.
So yeah, I didn't really expect that. The Twisted Fate being another one. Like there's just every single team just seems to like be like, these are the bans. We are just going to go with it. Like not gonna specifically ban out any individual person. We just stick to the same bans.
Right. Well, I mean, they are all like top tier in their role. They're pretty much banning the S tier of every role.
They're not bad. Like they're not bad bans by any means. It's just funny how consistent they are.
Well,
and I
sure.
think that's also just like the nature of like Korean League of Legends is like
they'll never give you the best weapon. They'll allow you to take every other secondary, but the S tier is off the table.
Yeah, it's just like, nope, that's gone, and we'll like just consistency is such a common thing with their League of Legends and everything. It cracks me up every time I see that, because when you start to look at the other regions, there's so much variation in a lot of those things, but just not so much with Korea. But seeing a little bit of, like you had said, some of these teams that like you don't know as many of the players and everything. I know part of that is due to just like us not having followed the LCK region other than like during the Worlds tournament.
Yeah.
But Fredit Bryan has looked pretty solid, and I think Umti is the only player that I like was aware of. I think before this year, they picked up a game off of T1, who is 2-0 in their like match record.
Yep.
But to be able to pick that up and also to go 3 games with Hanwha Life
Another
and win
freeze
that
here
series.
for a second.
There we go.
Oh, I just had a freeze.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I heard you. Yeah, so we're good. But then Hanwha Life, who had made it to Worlds this past year, going up and losing to Fredit, with like some similar players, but Hanwha Life is also a pretty different team from what we saw. So
Which, and we've talked about this before. It just goes to show like how quick these teams move and shuffle through, and are just trying to find that secret sauce that's going to get them victories. It may actually be maybe a fallacy of thought, like to want to know all of these players' names and everything, because just as quick as they were here, they may be gone.
yeah. Well, it's like such a strange thing though too, because you have teams like that, like Fredit Bryan, but then you also have on the counter like the Genji with Doran, Peanut, Chovy, Ruler, and Lehens, and like that. It's such a just like strange side of things. I guess we do have a little bit of that in other regions as well. But each team, I feel like in the LCK typically has 1 or 2 kind of long-standing LCK members, surrounded by some up-and-coming players. And to see a full team that all of them are relatively like younger, newer players and everything in the region, I think is interesting.
And it does give you an insight into how the region operates as a whole, where you realize it's not just these top teams. It's not just, T1 and Genji aren't the only organizations over there. There's this whole ecosystem of talent below these, top teams, and just like the farm systems and how they pull from Challenger and this and that. So it's interesting to where, to us, these feel like players that like, oh, they're fresh blood on the scene and blah blah blah, where they could have been playing for 3-4 years before we see them or get to know them.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting element of it.
Definitely. So that's something that is always interesting, but it's fun to see, and I like the mix up that we get to see in terms of kind of long-standing players, and seeing these up-and-comers get to go against them and kind of duke it out a little bit.
Yeah, the old guard versus the new. But yeah, that was some of the more interesting stuff out of LCK. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of aggression. The tower dives are coming in quick and fast in the bottom lane. You're seeing top lane jungle focus diving weak side top laners. So these junglers are not waiting for any marks. They're basically getting their double buffs and trying to dive turrets, which is like fascinating. So yeah, just really fast styles coming out, and moving over to China. It's even quicker over there. I feel like China is super aggressive, and more than other years is earning their like, oh, China is just all bloody and they just team fight. Like, there were some years where that actually wasn't true, but this year it is. It feels like a bloodbath, honestly.
Yeah, and for four teams to be able to come out unscathed, I mean, I know that there are a lot more teams over there having the 17 team league.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it gets like pretty crazy, I think, when you have that large of a pool of teams to potentially play, and everything in your schedule. It kind of lends itself to really just playing your style, which does in China in China especially. I think with how strong like dive champs and like engaging and team fighting are right now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see as much splitting up, as much like 1-3-1. It's a lot of like the death balls over objectives, and
Mm-hmm.
once you get past that early game stage, going into kind of the 5v5, just team fight of brawling like anywhere and everywhere on the map over objectives. I think that meta lends itself very well to the LPL play style typically.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Bloodbath as a good way to say it, as opposed to like I think in previous years people would always call like say it's like a clown fiesta and it's crazy,
Right,
but
right.
it's very calculated aggression. I don't really like the use of calling it like those different um, I just don't like calling it like a clown fiesta because there's a reason that they're playing those play styles.
Right.
There's a reason
And
that the Jax pick is coming out like consistently. There's
yeah.
where it's not in other regions.
And it is indicative of what am I trying to get at? It's not indicative of a fast and loose play style simply for that purpose, and this is just what they do and how they are. Like it obviously for many different years was the right way to play. China has won the world championships. EDG was the winners this past year. So that style of Chinese League of Legends is valid. It is a winning style. So to your point, I do believe, like you were saying, the term clown fiesta and like, oh, it's just craziness everywhere. They don't even like what even is macro in China. Like I truly believe you're not actually watching the games or watching the players because you would argue that that is the highest level of League of Legends. Being able to dive and go so fast and so aggressive, but then also like know how to capitalize and like actually use that to win the game. So I think there is something to be said for the way the Chinese play. But interestingly enough, you look down their pick and bans, they're not that different from every other region. It's not like they're using different weapons to accomplish that tool. So it's pretty cool watching the
Yeah.
Chinese play.
And one thing that I would say is they definitely have picked up on the use of the Vex more because
Yeah.
Vex has been stronger prevalence in both pick and ban for
Hmm.
them as opposed to other regions. I think they've gotten a good or seem to have a good idea of how they want to play with that champion. And I think that we're gonna see some a good bit more Vex play throughout the year. So
The fact
I'm
that she has resets, I think, makes her immediately competitively pickable.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. It puts her in a very good spot
Good
to
crowd
be
control,
kind of
good
a
damage.
yeah like a pretty solid champion in the meta where like you need to have mobility. The resets are huge.
Hmm.
So like we see on like the Viego ultimate and everything. Um, he's disgusting when he
I
is
know.
getting those resets. So um, I I've enjoyed watching some of the LPL that I've watched. I watched the LNG versus IG that happened, I guess,
Hmm.
last night,
Hmm.
and it was very interesting. I guess in terms of that coming to like such a late game in that matchup and everything, to the point where, I mean, 39 minutes, not crazy late like some of the 50-minute games, but to the point where it's at a super close game state, and all it takes is that one big team fight win to all of a sudden just push through and end the game and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that was also a Chemtech Dragon. I could be wrong, but for
Gotcha.
some
Okay.
reason I feel like LNG was able to sustain through that fight with a Chemtech Dragon. I would have to double check that and go back
Gotcha. Okay.
to be able to like get the ace to end the game and all. So
Nice. Yeah, the obviously the LPL games, they're going to be tougher to watch just based on the times that they are, because I'm pretty sure they're like really early in the morning. So I think we'll do our best to cover what LCK and LPL we can. But yeah, it's we're not going to have the most complete picture of these two regions, and especially because there's so many teams and so many games happening. They're all
right.
best of threes as well. There's just going to be a lot of data from the LPL and LCK that we don't get to sift through. So just kind of bear with us. If our points seem a little half baked or whatever, because we haven't seen everything. The timings are going to make it tough. But with that being said, I have really enjoyed what I've seen. Like you were talking about, the Vex is super exciting. Watching her like dive in on a Lee Sin or a porting Ezreal or whatever. I think she makes for some pretty exciting gameplay. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of her. Was there anything else you wanted to hit for LPL here?
Not in particular, other than just the fact that from watching that, like LNG, I think is going to be again a really solid team. I mean, obviously they're 3-0, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm not I'm not coming up with some new thought, but just looking specifically at their like score lines and everything in those two games specifically against IG. You see Doinby, for one, playing two very different styles of champions, playing the Renekton in game one and then the Twisted Fate, which is more of what you would think of for Doinby
Mm-hmm.
in game two. Going on those two champions, a combined 5-0 and 16 across the two games. Light, the 80 carry for LNG, going 12-0 and 11 combined on Jinx and Caitlyn in the two games, and then Tarzan going 8-1 and 16. The three there just looked and the team in general looked extremely strong. Game two against IG was like very close. IG looked like they were going to be able to kind of pull out that lead until it was like one team fight, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, the game, like that's how the game ends. Like, okay, death timers are long enough. So it was impressive that even though they were a little bit behind, I think it was a 7 kill to 6 kill
Oh wow.
game leading into that last team fight, or maybe it was 7-5 or something like that, and
Damn.
ended up a 12-6 getting the ace and everything. So even though they weren't like necessarily in the lead, they still like were by no means out of the game, extremely close across the board, to be able to kind of push through that. And so their ability to do that against an IG team that I feel like is going to bounce back pretty decently in
Yeah.
upcoming games. I mean, they've already played against OMG and LNG, two of the 3-0 teams in the league. I think
Mm-hmm.
that kind of skews their results. I think they're
I
going
would agree.
to
Yeah.
be a pretty solid team. So to see LNG kind of power through that and get the 2-0 in the series was just impressive to me. And I think, like you said, we're not going to be able to watch everything. But I would like to hopefully pick a couple of matchups from the different weeks and kind of go through them, discuss, see if we see anything interesting kind of as the season goes on, since we won't be
Yeah.
able to encompass all of the LPL.
No, definitely
So,
not. Well, definitely not encompass all of League of Legends. That's for sure. There's just so many games going on now. But yeah, that is really interesting, and hopefully we'll show. Hopefully, well, it's an element we don't talk about too much is strength of schedule. But I think here it really matters where IG face two of what are seeming to be two of the toughest teams right now. So yeah, those two losses shouldn't tell us too much yet.
yeah. And the Corki was like extremely high pick ban as well in the LPL. And so I think
Hmm.
that's where I got that impression that I expected it to be much more common in the other regions. Um, it, but I guess we'll just see kind of as the season continues forward how the other regions adjust to using that. Or if they just choose to continue to kind of play their own style and all. But yeah, that kind of wraps up our League of Legends talk. We had a lot to go through
Yeah.
with the different regions and all. I think going forward, we'll probably, with the other stuff we want to talk about, start to consolidate and look at some key points in each of the regions
Yeah, for sure.
kind of going forward. But
Just trying to paint some broad strokes this evening.
yep, kind of lay the groundwork moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
But I guess anything else we wanted to touch on before we move into the flavor of the week?
No, not really. I'm looking forward to hearing what you were munching on this week. Why don't you start us off here?
Sure. So this past week, Colleen and I had a nice little date night. Philadelphia has their restaurant week going on, so a lot of restaurants have like $40 3-course menus where you have like a small selection of options and stuff like that. And so we went out on a date night to this seafood restaurant, and part of the reason I wanted to go was they had a like one of their entrees was like filet and salmon. And so I've cooked for Colleen plenty. I've cooked her steak. I've made like I do a decent job, I would say, but she had never had like a really good steak from like a restaurant.
Okay.
And I was like, you have to. Like, it's one
Mm-hmm.
of those things that you don't know the difference until like I pride myself on a lot of my cooking, but
Mm-hmm.
I just can't cook a piece of filet like you're gonna get at a restaurant, whether it's like the equipment that I have or whatnot, or
Sure.
my culinary skills. So that was nice. She had that. I had some good shrimp scallops and other things. But that was a fun date night. So
And
that
did
is my
she
food.
enjoy her fillet?
She did very much.
Nice.
So she was a happy camper. I was a happy camper with my
A
food.
happy camper. I love that phrase. It's so funny.
So yeah, that is my food for the week. For my music, I was listening this week, and so today would actually have been Mac Miller's 30th birthday, which I didn't realize. Colleen actually told me.
Damn, she's a bigger fan than we are.
Apparently,
Rest
which
in peace.
yeah, so he would have been 30 today, which is it's pretty sad. But Colleen had gotten me, and I had mentioned it, his Swimming in Circles vinyl for Christmas. So I was jamming out to that a little bit earlier this week on the vinyl, taking that, like, I had kind of left it, like, I still had it in its, like, plastic wrap for, because
Mm-hmm.
I like it so much that I didn't want to take it out and potentially, like, mess it up.
Yeah.
But taking it out of the album and all and seeing, like, the other things that they have in it. There was like a little picture book of just like pictures of Mac, like I guess from during the time that he was recording the two albums.
Nice.
So there were like a lot of just like fun, like cool pictures that I feel like you don't really get to see as much.
Hmm.
So it was kind of cool to look at that and be like, man, like it just brought up some feelings and
Sure.
everything. So um, it was that is my music for this week. But also today is Dolly Parton's birthday, I believe, and Colleen's a big fan. So
Jolene.
uh,
Jolene.
yeah, so she shares a birthday today as well. So just a little Dolly Parton shout out for her birthday on my music for Flavor of the Week.
Nice.
And then for my show, I've just been recently watching an anime that I like. I just saw on Netflix. It's been pretty entertaining so far. It's called Assassination Classroom, and
Okay.
so the essential idea is there is a alien type creature that basically says he's gonna like destroy the world unless someone kills him. And so this class of like middle school students essentially get tasked with killing him.
Hell yeah.
He also, one of his conditions for, well, he was like, you can't kill me, so like you have to make me a teacher. So he is teaching the classroom of students that are trying to kill him and kind of teaching them
How
how
to
to
kill
kill
him?
him, but also at the same time, he's very confident in the fact that like
They wouldn't kill
they
him.
won't or won't be able to by he
Right.
set like a time deadline for when he's planning to like destroy the earth. So it's like not the typical anime that I've watched, which is usually like the big hero story and all of
Right.
that.
This is a
It's
schoolyard anime.
I guess that's what you call it.
Do
I
they have the like button-up shirts and the skirts and stuff? They would
not
have like the jackets on.
I guess they kind of have a like dress code, but I feel like it's mostly like blazers and shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Gotcha.
but like very like prep schooly.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah,
It's a schoolyard anime,
yeah.
100%.
But
Just like
it's
Yu-Gi-Oh was a schoolyard anime because they had those little fucking jackets on.
I didn't ever consider Yu-Gi-Oh a schoolyard anime, but
It is. It is.
but yeah, it's been entertaining because it's not as like action all the time. There's
Right.
like kind of the like there's a number of sides to it where like you're constantly through each episode learning more about like who this teacher mysterious alien organism is along with like watching the class kind of try and develop new ideas or strategies, but also kind of becoming endeared to the teacher because they're like
Right.
he's teaching them every day and they're like kind of living life around each other. So it's such a bizarre dynamic where they're like, we really like you as a teacher and that's dope, but like we have to also try and kill you because
Yeah, that's so odd.
it's like I think that's why I've enjoyed it. It's like
Sure.
it seems pretty unique compared to
That's
like
fun.
other just shows in general that I've seen.
Right.
So it's been a pretty entertaining one. So
Yeah, it sounds pretty kooky. I like that.
yeah. So that is my flavor of the week. Justin, what have you been munching on?
Mine's way more boring. My visual medium for the week, Sarah had on Titanic, and I sat down at like I guess a good moment. It was like right when they were like getting to the boat and they were like loading up the ship and whatever. And I get I guess I've never seen Titanic before cuz like I didn't recognize any of the scenes. And the beginning is so fucking contrived with like the old lady and like it is insane the lack of substance that they tried to pull out of this like cruise liner sinking. Like I understand I understand that there's like historical significance to an event like that, but putting that just with this love story just like latched onto it was so bad. And then go ahead.
Oh, I agree. It's just such an interesting one because, like, I'm sure there are tons of people who were like on that boat who were like in love on their honeymoon, like had loved ones that they were going to travel and see, and you're just focused on this one like individual.
Yeah, like it's crazy. And this goes to my thesis of every female love interest in films is not the woman that you should be going after. They're usually just the worst. And and I quote, this is something Rose says to her man before they get on the ship. She says, "My gosh, I feel like a slave being transported back to America in chains." That is a line of dialogue in that film. She is a rich white lady with 50 bags of luggage getting shipped across the fucking ocean.
on
Of all
the
people that
boat
died,
that is like the most like luxurious
yes,
ever to be built.
yes, yes, yes. Of all the people that died, she should have. I hated her so much. So much. And like I never even understood this. Like I knew I hated the movie, but I don't think I've ever seen it. I may have seen like clips on FX or whatever, but I finally saw the opening sequence of the movie and I was like, this fucking sucks.
Yeah.
The fact, man, In Chains, I was like, you are crazy. And then I thought to myself, didn't fucking James Cameron direct this? I said, cancel him. He's a racist No, I didn't go that far. It was just a bad fucking movie.
Yeah, I've seen it through once, but I mostly if I see it on, I'm catching it in the middle, which is the perfect time because I just wait out till I get to see and shout out to Shane, his favorite part of the movie. And so because we just think it's just wildly like comical and it's probably going to make us sound like fucking crazy people. But when the boat has started to sink and it's like tipping up, 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 and like gets almost vertical, there's like all the people jumping off and everything. And there's just this one dude who like hops off and as he's falling, nails like with half of his body one of the giant boat propellers. Ooh. And just goes spinning like violently out of control as he plummets into the water.
What?
And it's just
that's hilarious.
It like stands out so much that like it's the only thing I see when that's all going on. And so it's not like I don't find it funny due to like any like the guy hurting him, whatever.
Right.
It's just like there's all these people that are just like jumping off and like everyone's just like diving in and like get off this boat, and then there's just the one dude that's just like jumps off and it's just all of a sudden he's a freaking like boomerang spinning around.
Yo, he picked the wrong spot to jump. That's so funny.
Yeah. So
wow, I can't believe they left that in.
Yeah, it was. Man. It was an interesting clip, but no, the movie in general doesn't really intrigue me that much. I feel like, I mean, it is one of the top grossing movies of all time in terms of like dollar value. Mm-hmm. I think even like if you include inflation and everything, I think it took Avatar to beat it after like a decade or something like that. So definitely one you kind of have to see, but not one that I'm going to be going back and watching.
Yeah. Neither will I. It was a horrible experience. But yeah, so that was my visual medium. My music, I'm gonna give another shout out to Sarah on this one. We were watching The Last of the Mohicans, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about it before, but the original soundtrack, the score to that movie is absolutely beautiful. I believe it's Trevor Jones and somebody else. But yeah, the score to that movie is amazing, and I think it just elevates the elevates the heartbreak of that movie. It's a good one for sure.
Nice.
So that's my music. And then as my food, right before we sat down for the pod, Sarah made Wagyu beef burgers. I've never had them before, and they were fucking amazing. I
That
have to
sounds
say,
so goddamn good.
yeah, the beef was like I could actually taste the quality of the beef, so that was amazing.
Yeah.
But short, sweet, and to the point. That is my flavor of the week here for you, sir.
Nice. Well, the Wagyu beef, that is definitely, I may actually have to now. Colleen and I are going to be getting dinner with my parents this weekend. And just like catch up, see how they're doing and everything, have a nice dinner. But the place we're going has some Wagyu beef sliders, and so I may have to give that a shot. I've never had it. I've always heard high praise about it.
Go for it.
So
You gotta go for it.
now I may have to do that. So
It was the right choice, that's for sure. But yeah. Any closing thoughts? Any final words here?
no, just really enjoy, of course, each week coming out, making these episodes for you guys. So I'm looking forward to the coming weeks as we get more into the LCS season and into F1 again. But of course, you guys know where to find us: YouTube, Spotify. Hit us up on Twitter at Tall and Short of One. But that's about all I've got.
I just wanted to say thank you everybody for listening. We've seen a couple of new ears popping into the podcast, so I just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us. It truly is a pleasure to be here with Aaron every week to talk to you guys, guys, gals, whatever you are. We love you. We appreciate you. Now, if you're listening on Spotify, take a gander. I'm putting a question in there each and every week. Some are fun, some are, kind of for my information. So if you're listening on Spotify, take some time, fill out that question for me. I would really appreciate the feedback. And again, this has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
Later.